welcome everyone to my very favorite part of the Leadership Conference. This is the Mary Starke Harper Distinguished Lectureship, which is really more like a fireside chat. I know most of you know Mary Starke Harper. She was an enormously productive and effective leader in nursing, psychiatry, and geropsychiatry. She made a huge difference and touched the lives of many of us more than touched, actually, directed the lives of many of us for at least a period in our histories. Each year, we select a living legend. Now, a living legend is a designation by the American Academy of Nursing that is awarded to people who have made really substantial, lifelong contributions to nursing and have a commitment to continued contributions to nursing. And there are very few living legends. And Angela Barron McBride is one of them. And all of you know Angela as the prime mover in the Leadership Conference for building academic geriatric nursing capacity. But Angela has a career of leadership in many areas, actually, women's health, academic administration, and leadership in itself as a focus. So we're very honored to have Angela as our distinguished interviewee today. Angela, throughout your career, you've really been informed by both your background in nursing and developmental psychology. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about what influenced you during your childhood and adolescence with regard to your leadership and also how you see yourself as a leader.
Well, the developmental psychology really came a bit later because I got my doctorate in '78. I was always interested in mental health. And, I come out of a world where in high school you were either commercial track and you were heading towards business school, or you were academic track and you were going to be either a K through 12 teacher, a nurse, or a nun, in which case you were going to become a K through 12 teacher or a nurse. And my great uncle was the pastor of our parish, and he was good friends with the woman who was the CEO for Bon Secours Hospital in Baltimore. And he liked her, and he actually encouraged me to think about whether health work would be interesting. I mean, I grew up in a Polish ethnic enclave in Baltimore where you didn't really, I really can't speak the language, I can chop it up. But my grandmother, who had emigrated in 1905, never had to learn English because you could go to the grocery store, you could go to church, you could do everything in Polish, so you didn't really have to. And he was really the leader of the entire Polish community. And it was interesting because my grandmother, I think she had the hots for him. She is dead, so she will never see this tape and be mortified. But, she would respect him and kiss his hand when he came to bless food at Easter. My mother did his laundry, and she ironed all of his underwear and everything else. I'm telling you this because I was the third generation, and by the time I came around, and I always was, shall we always say, a little pushy. I was the first woman officer of the Catholic Youth Organization of Holy Rosary Parish. These are my big distinctions, Catherine. But it's interesting because my great uncle had grown up where he was so reserved in dealing with women. And he was raised that way. And I've seen pictures of him. He was really a very handsome man. And he always wanted to be careful. And somehow both my curiosity, my interest, and the fact that I was now his grandchild generation, he tolerated a lot from me. We actually had more of a friendship than my mother or my grandmother did because they were more constrained by what was appropriate. And so his suggesting this, I mean, he knew I wanted to go to college. And so my interest in nursing really came through, I was a nurse's aide for I started working when I was 13. I worked every summer, I worked weekends, and essentially I worked overtime, really as a practical nurse, not a licensed nurse, but I did when I think now of the legal liability of what I did, I say to myself, boy, they were really bad administrators. But I gavaged preemies as a teenager. I mean, I was tall. I was as tall as I am now. I remember, like 14, being on a women's service, and somebody saying to me she was having trouble with breastfeeding, and I was telling her just to relax. Now, doesn't that sound like a mental health nurse in the making? The good part is they let me do so much that I really became interested in health. I was really interested in nursing. And I had an opportunity to be pre-med in college, and I chose not to go in that direction. I really knew that I liked nursing better. I thought medicine was much more repetitive and boring. I don't know how I got that impression, but if you look at some surgeons, you do have the impression that it is repetitive and boring, though very technical. And I like the working with people. So but I knew I wanted to go to college. I did not want to go to a hospital program. And in the 50s, to make that kind of a decision, it was still pretty avant-garde. And then within that, I was always interested in mental health even more than psychiatric nursing. What was normal? How did you promote normality? How did you facilitate people? So eventually, when I went for a doctorate, my master's is in psychiatric mental health nursing. And then the women's movement happened. And that made me even more interested in normal growth and development. And so by the time I actually went and got a degree in developmental psychology, it fitted with my interest. I have to also tell you that my first book, The Growth and Development of Mothers, was reviewed on page 3 of the New York Times, the Sunday edition, something like 3 weeks before Mother's Day. And Letty Cotton Pogrebin, who was one of the associate editors of Ms. Magazine, did it. And she actually said I had a doctorate in psychology. So I didn't want to make her a liar. So eventually I actually did get one. She also said I was a psychiatric nurse. I mean, she actually said both.